Tommy Rowe and Chris Montez were the headliners for this tour. And, they were quite established stars, although, again, they've had their moment in the spotlight. But they're still quite well known. Chris Montez was known for, I think the song was Let's Dance. But years earlier. Tommy Rowe was Sheila. They come with a bit of a pedigree. But once again, they're blown away by this growing audience reaction to these four young guys.
Girls screamed at the dressing room window from the outside pavement below us. Ringo actually chucked a glass of water through the open dressing room window to the delight of the screamers.
We were writing it in a car, I think, and I think the first line was mine. I mean, I know it was mine. And then after that, we took it from there. It was far bluesier than that when we wrote it. But that was a combination written song. It was not a song, written individually. It was created together, singing into each other's nose.
Tour. Little things like From Me to You would be on the tour bus. So we wrote From Me to You. I remember being very pleased with the middle eight because it was a sort of strange chord in it. And I got on so long, it sort of goes to a minor, and we thought that was very big step. It was like, ooh, this is something we hadn't done before.
First, they wanted to open the song with a George Harrison guitar intro, a novel idea for an early 60s pop song. But Martin, with his innate talent for adding patina to an unfinished idea, threw a more radical wrench into the discussion. Instead of using the guitar as an intro, why not just sing the guitar line? Da-da-da-da-da-dee-da-da. This suggestion left all four Beatles slightly dumbfounded. Surely that would be beyond bizarre, was the group consensus. No rock and roll artist in memory had ever sung an opening guitar riff.
From Me to You was really important because that kind of put the stamp on it. We had the first one, which did good. They let us back in the studio. We did the next one, and then we had the album, which did good. And then From Me to You, the next single, because remember, everybody would try to do in those days, make a single that sounded just like the one that was the previous one that was the hit. And we kind of avoided that, but if you notice, it did have the harmonica still on it, which was like a little trademark at that time. So From Me to You had the harmonica, but it did kind of, it was so different, but it also, made it look like, these guys are here to stay.
From Me to You, it could be done as a sort of old ragtime tune, especially the middle eight. And so, we're not writing the tunes in any particular idiom. So, in fact, in 5 years' time, we may arrange the tunes differently, but we probably write the same old rubbish.
I'd often buy a record and feel cheated by the B-side because we knew how it had felt to take your little pocket money in and get a rubbishy record.
I think it was the tour after that, when it was Tommy Rowe and Chris Montez and the Beatles.
Chris is such a sweetheart of a guy, easy to be around, and just a lot of fun. And it was good that then when we got moved to England, that was just perfect because we just.
So I land there, and all of a sudden I'm behind stage, and we're getting sound check or getting the show together, and they say, "Oh, by the way, these are the guys that they're on the show with you and Tommy Rowe, of course," and they were just regular guys, like musicians, coats and the look, and I said, "Hey,
When I first went to England in 1963. Sheila was a big hit over there as well. And Chris Montez, my old friend Chris Montez, and I were headliners of this show at England. And on the bill, this was a feature act called the Beatles.
They went on the first night, and I'm standing on the side, and Paul McCartney starts singing Lawton Sally or Good Golly Miss Young. And I said, wow, these guys can rock, Because I was already said I knew I could rock, I thought anyway. That's where my mentality was. And it was wonderful because watching them and watching the audience resist, the way they treated us. And when I come on, I never had people scream at me.
And they moved us to being, actually closing the first half of the show, something like that.
Oh, when I toured with them in England in '63, they were full of questions. They wanted to know if I'd met Buddy Holly, if I'd met Elvis, what's it like in Massachusetts. I mean, there was just one question after another. They never dreamed they'd ever get to America.
Right.
and the girl's chasing you and ripping your clothes. And I said, wow, you know. So
did you want to move to England at that point?
I didn't have to. I was there all the time, you know, through 4 weeks with them. And it was amazing because sometimes we'd be up in this hotel and and the guy say, Ringo, go up by the window because there'd be people standing out there. And he'd go out there and we just look and they'd be going, wow, they'd be screaming. Okay, Paul, it's your turn. Come on. They scream, come on, you, Chris. And so I go up there and they'd be screaming, like teasing the people. But it was fun, you know. It was a young experience. I mean, you know.
And it was wild and crazy, man. And so when we would finish our show and leave the theater, they would the fans would chase you down the street. And if they couldn't find a Beatle to chase, they'd chase Chris. And the funny part is when they caught you, then they didn't know what are we doing? It's like your favorite going. I mean, it was really something.
I remember this experience where Paul and I were out there up here in Lennon with the girls hanging out, and all of a sudden Ringo and Harrison come in, and I said, "Hey guys, where were you?" And we're coming down. We're at this hotel, right? And they said, "Oh, we were just doing something. We're coming." I said, "Hey, there's some girls in there that don't want nothing to do with either of us. They want to see Ringo and George. Show us a place." And they said, just right up the stairs, and that's the last time I saw them. You know.
I walked into a club in Liverpool called the Blue Angel, which belonged to Alan Williams, the Beatles' first manager. It was on my way home from the Cavern, so I often popped in for a drink. As I went in, I noticed John's back at the bar. He was sitting on a stool, and I knew immediately he was him because he was wearing a light blue mohair jacket. He never wore anything else. The thing was, he was supposed to be in Bedford. He told me, "I've had enough, so I decided to come back to Liverpool." He insisted we drink whiskey after whiskey, and we didn't leave the club until 4:20 in the morning. By then, I was falling around and seeing two of everything.
About that. Well, now, you've probably read somewhere recently that John Lennon was being out of the act with a dodgy throat, right, John?
Dodgy, oh, very.
Well, he's back now, as you can hear, and he'll be working with the boys tonight, I guess.
Oh, definitely. I joined them last night, yeah.
I mean, he got me drinking Guinness, you know. Oh, he was a big Guinness drinker. And so I started liking Guinness, and we would hang out in the pubs together, you know. And we got along very well. John was a kind of a rough and tumble guy, you know.
So Paul puts this LP, you know, 33. Well, she was just 17. I said, wow, that's a great song, guys, you know, and they played me the whole album. And I had Paul play that song about 6 times, you know, because I liked it, you know, it was a great song.
I don't know if you've heard the story about they did a big party for them in Manchester when they released their first LP, and we went to this big kind of a big house, big castle, and there were like 100 to 200 people there. And the bus pulled up for the show. The whole show went in, and they were presented with like certificates of merit and all of that from the politicians. And of course, they publicized their first album. And so during the party, Chris got tired and went back to the bus. And right after Chris went, I went back, and Chris was asleep in the aisle seat. And I stepped over him and sat next to him at the window. Well, a few minutes later, John comes on the bus with a pint of Guinness in his hand, and he pours it over Chris's head.
Oh,
well, Chris comes out of his chair swinging, and they're in the aisle. Him and John are just battling one another. It's like a rugby match on the bus, you know.
Oh my God.
And nobody would break it up. So I said, man, you guys, let's break this up, you know, stop this. And I'm the one that broke up the fight. So John got mad at me for breaking it up because he was just getting the best of Chris, you know. So after he used to let me borrow his Gibson guitar on the bus to write songs. In fact, I wrote everybody on John's Gibson guitar on that tour. And after that, he wouldn't let me use his guitar anymore.
Well, John was rowdy. Well, he's crazy. I mean, so was I. But one time we were finishing this tour, doing this show at this private club. And, well, no, it's a concert, but we went to someone's home and they were having a party for us. And we're sitting. And I was, you know, I've been partying all the time. It gets old after a while, you know. I went going in the bus. The bus was parked in front of the house. And I was sleeping, and all of a sudden, I hear a lot of rackets, you know. I'm like this, and all of a sudden, someone pours beer on my head, and it was John Lennon. I said, "You son!" I got up, and we got into it, you know. They broke us up on the bus, and that was my experience with John Lennon.
Yeah, just by the way, John Lennon had a bit of form for pouring beer over people's heads, because there's 2 occasions I can think of off the top of my head. They played a wedding in about 1958. And I think there was a middle-aged woman who was, I don't know, mouthing off or acting up, and John Lennon poured a full pint of beer over a middle-aged lady's head. And then in 1962, you know, after Stuart Sutcliffe's death, Lennon was behaving pretty wildly. He did the same to Brian Epstein when he was over in Hamburg.
It's a bit dangerous, you know, because jelly bean travelling about 50 mile an hour through the air, if it hits you in the eye, well, you're finished, you know, you're blind, aren't you? So we've never liked people throwing stuff like that. We don't mind them throwing streamers, but jelly beans are a bit dangerous, you see.
He was a photographer with the Free Czech Army.
Sometimes the stories he'd tell me, he'd make you cry.
And he would tell us that he had
been shot twice, that he had a piece of shrapnel still in him.
They put a noose around his neck and strung him on a tree.
Deso was a star photographer, but he's also a very good friend of ours.
I felt 17 again. I could have been their father when all this was happening. When they saw how easy it is when I show it to them, they all wanted to make films. Actually, 50% of that film is them. Then every time somebody is missing of the Beatles in the thing, he's filming it. I couldn't control them. It was impossible to control. It was just like in a jungle with wild beasts, you know. From John to Ringo, you know, they've been jumping. You probably can see it on the film, you know, but you can't. But the noise is what they created. So eventually, by my sort of sergeant type of voice, I got them sometimes together, and I quickly clicked four together. The boys are naturals. It's just one of those things. There is no other group they can get themselves as elephants or ants or whatever have you. There won't be a group like, I can assure you, in our lifetime or anybody else's lifetime.
Bruce had a party, and I went along to it. When I got there were the Beatles. And we had that one evening together, and we were in the kitchen, and we said to them, they'd had Please Please Me, and we said, well, what's going to follow it? They said, well, don't know. I don't think it's any good. And then Bruce said, can you play? Paul said, you've got a guitar. Bruce got the guitar out, they took the guitar, and they went, da-da-down, da-da-down, down, down. We're going, oh no. It was so obviously a smash. Fantastic.